Hello everyone and welcome to this Nordschleife track guide. I hope the video is useful, but first I have some notes you should know about. First of all, the first lap will be interrupted a lot with brakes, pauses and slowing down footage to analyze the corners and brake zones, and the second lap will be at full speed so you can get a good sense of what a lap is like at the Nordschleife. The car I'm driving in the video is the Corvette DP high downforce, and it has the exact same brake zones as the GT2 car, so that should be no problem. And finally, on a last note, I'm using a long first and second gear, which is quite normal on the Nordschleife, but it's something to keep in mind when I'm referencing gears. So now let's finally start the lap. So here we are approaching the first corner of the GP part of the track. Your brake zone should start between the first and the second marker, about halfway in between, and you should try to get a wide entry into the corner. As you can see in the footage, I take a wide entry. I do this to get a better run out of the second corner. Unfortunately, I shift down a little too early to first gear, which causes me to almost spin and lose some time, but I just managed to hold on. If you don't ruin turn 1 like I did, turn 2 is quite easy. You just get as close to the inside wall on the left as possible and then just accelerate out of the corner and using all the room that's available. So the brake zone for turn 3 is actually quite easy to spot. It's this tarmac patch on the right, and when that ends, that's when your braking should start, and you shift down one gear the third. To set yourself up nicely for the next corner, try to keep the car in the middle of the track, so the next corner becomes a lot easier. This brake zone is a bit of guesswork, but it's not that hard actually. Shift down to second gear and use all the room on exit to get a nice run on this back straight. Right here where I paused the video is the start of your next brake zone. It's right after the start of this ACRL on the left. Shift down to second gear and let the car roll through the corner and just try to get a good exit. Here we are approaching the Schumacher S. It's a fourth gear corner with a small lift. Might be flat out if you have a good setup, and try to stay off the inside curb on the first left-hander. So this is quite a tricky brake zone. You should start braking when you're about halfway past this extra tarmac on the right, and I shift all the way down to second gear, but third might be doable. For the next corner I don't actually brake, I just lift and let the car coast through the corner and try to get on power as early as possible to have a nice run on this back straight. The brake zone for the NGK chicane is actually quite easy. It's right after the second brake marker. You shift down the third and try to use all the room that's available to have a nice run through this corner. So the next corner is very bumpy, and it's pretty crucial you have a good entry speed, and the entry speed is actually quite low for this corner, so don't overdo it. You can easily spin, especially in the DP. It's a second gear corner, and try to keep the tight line and basically don't take it like I did. It's a bit too wide already. Braking for this second corner on Nordschleife is actually quite easy. You just start braking as soon as the barrier on the right ends. Keep the car in second and try to hit the apex nicely. Once again, I miss it. This next section should be flat out in DP, and it might require a small lift in GT cars, but I'm not sure about it. Okay, so here where I paused the video is where I start braking. I shift down 2 gears to third for the first left-hander, and then back down the second for the right-hander that comes right after it. In the next bit I'm dancing a bit on the pedals. I shift back up to third for this left-hander, back down to second for the right-left combination that comes right after it. Then I accelerate back up to third gear, shift back down back to second for this right-hander, set up a nice run for the straight that follows, and now we can finally unleash our cars. So we're quickly coming up to Flugplatz. I take it flat out in the DP, and in GT cars it might require a small lift to get through the corner. So if you check the top of the screen, you can see me check my brake bias to see if it's correct, and I do this because the corner after Schwedenkreuz is Arenberg and it requires heavy braking. Once again, where I paused the video is the start of the brake zone. It's easily spotted if you look to the left of the screen. Where that curb ends is basically where your braking should start. I shift all the way down to second. Could be third in some cars. Try to hook up the corner nicely and aim for a good exit because there's a long straight that comes after this corner. Okay, so here we're approaching the Adenauer Frost complex. For the first left-hander you shift down to fifth. It's a high-speed corner. Then for the right-hander that follows, shift down to third. Keep the car on the right side of the road so you have a nice wide entry into the chicane. Shift down to second and set the car up for a nice exit out of the right-hander that follows. So here we are approaching Metkesveld. I take it in fourth gear, might be doing with a small lift in fifth gear. You should keep your eye on the right side of the road. When that AstroTurf there ends, it's your brake zone for the next corner. Shift down to second and just let it roll through the corner. The start of the brake zone for the next corner is when you pass the third marker on the left hand side and shift down to second and let the car roll through the corner. So for this next section of track, it's actually a fast triple right hand corner, and all you have to do is dance a bit on the throttle pedal and make sure you hook up each of the three right handers nicely, and most importantly, stay off the inside curbs. The next corner I believe is called Weerseifen. It's a tricky corner. You first shift down to second gear from fourth on the initial entry to the right, and then you shift down to first for the slow hairpin-like corner to the left. And be very careful because it's very easy to lock up the front left tire there. For Exmühle, the next corner, your braking should start when the curb ends on the right hand side and let the car roll through the corner. Try to stay off the exit curb, and the corner after that, small tap on the brakes, shift down to second, and be careful when you go over the crest because it can cause some oversteer on when you get on throttle. Here we are coming up to Bergwerk, which I'm sorry for my horrible Dutch pronunciation, and you should start braking for the corner right before you go past the Yokohama sign on the right hand side. It's the little black board. For the corner itself I shift down to second. You could use third gear, stay off the curbs on both the inside and the outside of the corner and accelerate onto this back straight. So after that long back straight we come up to the mid curve. You should tap the brake slightly, shift down to fifth, hope the car sticks through the corner and try to stay off the inside curb as it's once again very deadly. The right hand corner that follows should be flat out in fifth gear in almost any car. So here we are approaching one of the toughest corners on the track. You should start braking right before the curb starts on the left hand side. I go all the way down to second gear and make sure you don't overdrive the corner because it's very easy to spin on entry. So here we finally arrived at the famous carousel. You should start braking right before this kink in the road on the right hand side and shift all the way down to first gear and try to keep it in the carousel because it's by far the fastest way to take the corner. So here we are approaching the Hohe 8. I shift down to third before the corner in the DP, but if you're driving a GT car it might be better to shift down to fourth for the left hander and then back down to third for the right hander that follows. The right hand corner that follows has a blind entry. I shift down to second. You could keep it in third, but be sure to stay off the curbs on the exit because they have caught me out before if you look for the tire marks on the track. So this next bit of track is quite hard, but it's also a lot of fun to drive. It's all about throttle control. Keep the car in fourth gear, hit this first right-hand apex neatly, so you can set up nicely for this left-hander. Keep the car on the left-hand side, so you can set it up once again nicely for this right-hander. Take as much curb as you can and let it roll through. So for the next couple of corners you should brake right before this curb ends on the left-hand side. You shift down the third. It's a blind apex corner, so you just go over the crest blindly and hope the car sticks. Once again, it's about throttle control. Try to hit this first apex nicely. I go on power a little too early, hit the grass, almost spin again. And once again, just control the throttle, let the car roll through the corners nicely, and it should all be fine. For this corner I shift down to second. In a GT car you could actually keep it in third, let it roll over the crest and try to get on power as soon as possible. So this next corner is called Ice Curve, and it's called Ice Curve for the reason. It's an off-camber corner, it has very little grip, it's taken in second gear. Don't overdo it, it's easily to spin, and try to stay off the exit curb as it can unsettle the car. So here we are at Vlanskarten 1. I brake right before I go over this little jump. It helps with stability, but if your car is nice and stable you can brake after the jump. You shift down to fourth gear and try to hook up the corners as nicely as you can. This little crest can actually be quite deceiving because it's followed by a left-hand corner. Be sure to stay off the inside curbs as they unsettle the car like most of the curbs do on the Nordschleife. It also had a very tight exit, so make sure you don't run out of room. You might actually have to lift there in a GT car. So that little straight is followed by a right-hander. You should start braking right before the tarmac changes color. Shift down to fourth. Try to keep the car on the right hand side of the road, so you set up the left hand corner that follows nicely. Shift down 2 gears to second and try to hook up the corner as best as you can. So now we're arriving at the second of the two famous carousels. I shift down to second, you could keep it a third once again. Make sure you get into the carousel and not stay on top of it, because then you lose a lot of time. So for the next two right-handers I shift down to third. It might be doable in fourth with a little lift, but the exit out of the corner is much more important than the entry, because it leads onto Dottinger Open, the longest straight on the track, which I think is known to almost everybody. So right before this curb on the right end I start braking. I shift down to fourth before the left-hander, and then shift down 2 more gears after this little left-hand kink, down to second for the right-hander that leads back onto the GP part of the track. So that was a full lap on the Nordschleife. The lap time was 7 minutes 59.4 or something. So it was sub 8 minutes, and it's one of the faster times at the moment. I hope this guide helped, and now a full speed lap will follow.